Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, as you could tell by the title and the thumbnail, we're going to be discussing the KC Cup and the KC Grand Tournament, and what I despise about them, as well as the major issue with the current meta, and we'll talk more extensively about the meta as we go through the video, but right now I do want to discuss the KC Cup and the KC Grand Tournament. And so we're here on duellinksmeta.com looking at the top 128 decks from this most recent KCGT. Now, the Grand Tournament is a pretty interesting thing. The preliminary tournament's pretty cool. It basically just allows the best players in the world at this format to participate and show up for the actual tournament. And get invited and all of that stuff. So it's basically just a great way to determine who the best players are. Except it's not. It determines who the player that has the most, basically, dedication to the game is. Who can put in the most amount of duels the quickest, right? That's all it is. Because of the format that there is, right? Right now, it follows an ELO system, where points are gained and lost for each win and loss. However, the ELO system that it utilizes makes it so that you are almost always going to be gaining more for a win than you will ever lose for a loss. You are guaranteed to always get more for a win than you are going to lose for a loss. The reason I repeated that is because that is insanely important. That means if you have a 50% win rate, you will be at the top levels as long as you play enough games. It doesn't matter if you only have a 50% win rate, because you can literally just grind out enough games to reach the top. Which means, realistically, all you have to do is get a deck that wins quickly and get a ton of games in, right? It doesn't matter if it's inconsistent, just get a deck that wins quickly. This has been a huge problem for the KC Cup and the KCGT. So, this ELO system is really bad. Let it be known, it's really bad, and it's normally why I don't participate heavily in the KC Cup / KCGT. It's incredibly boring, and it's always filled with the same decks, and everyone just surrenders incredibly quickly, and you don't really get to play the game. So, let's talk about the decks, okay? Now, the main tournament is much better. It's actually a tournament. Yeah, it's very similar. You do a stage 1, and then you do a top 16. It's pretty simple, it's pretty good, and it works. Not the greatest, but it's better than whatever the frick's going on with the actual preliminary tournament. And there is a very simple way that Konami could fix this. All you do is you make it so that there is a cap on the number of duels that you can play within these 3 days, right? Or you significantly shorten the amount of time that the tournament is up, right? It would still incentivize quicker wins, but it would incentivize more consistent quick wins, right? Decks that can consistently win and have a higher win rate, right? Because all of a sudden, if you play 200 games in a shorter time versus 600 games, your losses are going to matter a lot more, right? Whereas if another person plays 120 games but is consistently winning more, they're going to have a higher chance of getting to the top. Now, let's show you the decks and why the ELO system is a problem. The first place deck, props to Act, played phenomenally. I'm sure that they did great. But the first place deck is Cyber Dragons. Cyber Dragons are not strong. They are not a good deck. Realistically, if you were to take this into a best of 3 scenario, Cyber Dragons lose most of the time. But they are insanely good at taking wins quickly, and they are easily accessible or easily playable in quick fashion. You can play them without having to think too much, right? It's basically, you activate Cyber Style by utilizing things like Cosmic Cyclone, Herald of the Abyss, or Cybernetic Fusion support. You activate Cyber Style, you fusion summon with Cyberletter Fusion or your Fusion Gate, and then you win the game or you lose the game. The game has already been decided by turn 2 with this deck. That's why it's so good, right? Book of Moon is just a good card, and I will talk about Book of Moon when I do my ban list prediction / wish list video. But all in all, yeah, Cyber Style is an insane skill because it can get you up to 3 cards, 3 monsters on the field for free. Life points don't matter in this game. Realistically, they really don't. When you only have 4,000, life points do not matter. So, yeah. Being able to utilize things like Cosmic Cyclone or Cybernetic Fusion support to activate this is insanely good. Most of the time, you're only using it to get 2 monsters on the field, but guess what? That's all you need, because all of a sudden, you're off to the races. You could have literally 4 spells in your hand, and all of a sudden, you can summon, like, a Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon and a Twin Cyber Dragon onto the field in the same turn, which is well over lethal. And you're still able to pop cards or get rid of cards with things like Cosmic or Storm or something along those lines, right? That's insane. That's ridiculous. And definitely should not be a thing. There you go. Cyber Style. All that you need to do is you take away the life point restriction, make it so that every 1,000 life points you lose, you can play 1 Proto Cyber Dragon. Just 1. That's it. That's all I'm saying. You just get the 1. Can be used twice per duel. There you go. Right? You lose 1,000 life points, you can play a Proto Cyber Dragon. And then have the same restrictions. Can't be tributed, can only use face-ups, or you can't special summon except for fusion summoning, and you can only attack with fusion summon monsters. That's fine. All of that's fine. But yeah, this deck is sad, because it's not even that strong. But we're going to continue talking about this by scrolling down and looking at the 3rd place, which is another quick OTK deck. Okay, Onomats. Onomatoplay, I've talked about how this skill is insane before, but let me talk about it again. Switcheroo, real quick, I'm going to talk about this first. Switcheroo was a skill where you returned a card to draw a random card. This is just that for an archetype, except it's better because you get a specific card, right? You can return a card to grab a specific card. Switcheroo was nerfed, so that now it requires a life point decrease, I think. But this skill's still fine, right? This has already been nerfed as well, right? Switcheroo, you can only do it once. This skill, you can do it twice. I don't know how this is a thing. This skill is insane. But all in all, it kind of still doesn't matter, right? Because this deck is all about the OTK, and it can do it, again, consistently. Why do you think it got rank 3? Because it's quick, it can OTK, it knows it's going to win by turn 2, and it's pretty decent. Right? That's basically it. It's like, it knows it's going to win by turn 2, right? Either it goes first, and it sets up a weird board and tries to prevent you from killing it, and then it has the good follow-up, or it goes second, it, destroys you with things like Mystical Space Typhoon, Book of Moon, and Gigabolt, or Gagabolt, and then just proceeds to OTK you, yeah. And then by turn 2, it knows. So there you go. A lot of these decks have that thing in common, where by turn 2, it's going to know if it wins or loses. So moving on, another Onomatopoeia deck, this time with H-Runade. We'll talk about H-Runade later, but yeah, pretty simple. Don't even worry about the extra deck. Don't even worry about the cards. Just, yeah, there you go. This is, I think, arguably the best deck of the format because of win rate. I think that realistically, Thunder Dragons probably have the best win rate in the game due to the fact that they can consistently survive getting OTK'd. The big issue, though, is that they're a little bit slower. They can still OTK, they can still do a lot, they're still quick, but they're not as quick, right? And, yeah, you'll see that there are a lot more OTK decks, or decks that know that they've won on turn 2. Thunder Dragons aren't quite that way, right? That's why they're playing things like Destiny Draw and Sphere Karibo and Trifortress Ops, right? They want to grind the game out a little bit more, and they know normally by turn 3 or 4 if they're going to win the game or have the potential to win. But oftentimes, they're still pretty quick. And overall, I do think that right now, they're in this format, they're probably the best deck. Genuinely. That's my thoughts. They are, in terms of win rate, the best deck. Moving on, another Cyber style, this time with Into the Void, to gain more access to things like your Cyber Dragon core. Alright, pretty basic. Triple Book of Moon as well. Triple Book of Moon is everywhere. Book of Moon's insane in this format. Anyway, moving on. Fatal 5. This is basically just... It's specifically to deal with things like Resonator, which is incredibly powerful as well, and probably the most prominent deck, something that was played in a ton. But basically, if they set up 3 monsters against your Lunalight board, they just lose because you attack. You can attack up to 6 times with one of your monsters, but with this, if a monster attacks 5 times in one turn, you win the duel. So you attack 5 times with your Lunalight Cat to Dancer, and then you win. So it was just a meta call. Pretty cool. However, Lunalights themselves are very similarly in OTK strategy. If there's an attack position monster, you send Fox to the graveyard, you change it to 0, you attack in, and you win. Pretty simple. You use Sphere Karibo and Trifortress Ops in order to protect yourself from getting killed, and that's basically it. Again, you basically know by turn 2 whether you've won or lost the duel. Do you have Lunalight Fusion or do you not? Do you have access to it or do you not, right? That's basically it. Tenki's also just basically any of these Lunalight cards. So, really good. Tenki's really, really strong. It sees play all the time in the TCG because it's just a search card. You just add a card. That's really pretty good. Oh, look at that! More Cyber Dragon. Are we surprised? Not at all. Okay, this is where things kind of get interesting. So, Harpy's Hunting Ground is used to basically bait out the fact that you're playing Harpies, and then you play Triamids. Triamids are pretty good here because they don't get OTK'd very effectively, and you could just sit on a Sphinx. And then you win. That's it. That's the whole strategy. Is you play this, just synchronize with Sphinx, as well as bait your opponent into summoning something turn 1 that deals with Harpies, but doesn't deal with Triamids, and then you play Triamids, and you sit on Sphinx, and then your opponent can't do anything. Really good for the meta of the KC Cup. Not actually a good deck. More Cyber Dragons. More... another different style of OTK strategy. This time you're going to nuke the field and then go into, well, actually no, this is a slightly different strategy because it's flight control, but it's more of just the same. You know, you go into Queriondrax, you go into your Squire Saga or your TG Star Guardian and stuff like that. You just OTK your opponent pretty quickly. Yeah. There you go. Another one, Flight Control. Very similar. You just OTK with Hama, you OTK with Queriondrax and anything else. You know, you can summon with your TG Star Guardian so many times. It's just another OTK deck. Pretty simple. Here we go. Another one. Another OTK deck, along with Thunder Dragons, which I've mentioned, and Harpies. This one I haven't mentioned, but basically it's an in-between between an OTK deck and a control deck. It doesn't really do either one too effectively, but it does win or lose on turn 2. You basically know by turn 2 whether you've won or lost, and with Harpies Hunting Ground, you are able to pop a lot of back row. So if you're seeing a lot more spells and traps in the back row, you can use Harpies Hunting Ground to deal with it. That's basically it. Oh, look at that. It's another one. Oh, look at that. It's another Luna Light, this time with Vajra as well, because you really, really want to get your Destiny draw. Onomatoplay! Woo! Onomats. Let's go. Okay, Harpies. Once again, this time, triple Book of Moon. I don't know if you've noticed, but there have been a lot of Book of Moons. Triple Book of Moon. There's a triple Book of Moon. There's a double Book of Moon, right? Book of Moon's kind of insane. Really, really strong. Because it flips down a lot of threats that will have activated abilities on the field, and you just flip it down. Flip face down. No longer an issue. Alright, this is the first time we are seeing both of these decks, and realistically, this deck in particular was what everyone was playing around, because this deck was basically the most powerful going into the format. However, I don't think that this was actually the strongest deck, because it doesn't win quickly enough, while also not really having the best, like, grind game, right? It can get OTK'd pretty effectively, unless you specifically draw things like Solemn Scolding or Treacherous Trap Hole, and they don't draw an out to it. While also not really OTKing as effectively. It's still incredibly strong, it's incredibly consistent, its grind game is insane. This skill is onomatoplay on steroids, and you know what I think about that skill, so there's that. As for this one, it is... I don't know, it's just another deck that wins on turn 2. You can tell whether you've won on turn 2, and that's basically it. That's all you need to know. I've done a video talking about this deck. There you go. Yeah. And that's basically everything that I wanted to talk about. Look, there's a whole bunch of Demon Resonance. Oh, this is the last one. Look at it. All it is an OTK deck using heroes. They were playing gosh dang Neo Alias in here, and they made it work. Do you want to know why? Because this format is trash. Let's go back to the top. Let's talk about this terrible ELO system once again. The fact that you are able to solely win, right, and gain points based on this ELO system means that that it doesn't matter what your win-loss record is, as long as it's somewhat even, which is pretty easy to do. And then it's just based on the amount of games that you play. If you haven't played in a KC Cup or a KC GT, pretty simply, you gain at least 1,000 points per win, and you lose at most 800, I believe. And that's all you need to know. Meaning, even if you have a negative win rate, you can still have more points than, you know, a vast majority of other people, solely based on the number of games that you've played, right? Which means that basically all of this means nothing. It has nothing to do with the actual meta. If we go to the actual meta, right, and we look at this tier list, right, we can see this is what they predicted for the KC GT, was Resonator, Thunder Dragon, and then all of these other decks. Well, Cyber Dragons weren't in here, but guess what? Cyber Dragons won. Why? Because right now, the meta is actually pretty weak. Resonators aren't actually that strong. Thunder Dragons have potential, but brick kind of consistently. Fire Kings don't do anything. Water Exes, meh. Again, it's more of a meta call. It's like an anti-meta strategy. Harpies are fine. Again, not really too great. Onomats have been hit, and honestly should continue to get hit, because that skill's insane, but other than that, they don't really do anything. Shiranui basically is just zombies with a whole lot of back row. And again, kind of an OTK strategy after some setup. They just take a little bit longer. But all in all, you know, That's all. I just... The KCGT, the KC Cup, you should never invest into them. You should never think that if you get first place that you were the best player. Don't get me wrong, if you get first place, you definitely deserved it. You played pretty well. You definitely had the right strategy, the right meta call, like props to act. I'm just saying that doesn't necessarily mean that you are the best player at the time. It just means you put in the most effort. There you go. Has nothing to do with win rate, has everything to do with games played. And that's just sad. That's all. Hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. I'm going to get out of here. If you did enjoy it, a like is very much appreciated. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links action, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.